My name is Emily Ross. I'm 33 years old, and I work as a graphic designer in New York. This morning, my phone lit up, dragging me out of a sleepy haze. 29 missed calls from an unknown number. In a flash, I was transported 20 years back. Back to the day when I was 13, standing alone at Penn Station, watching my parents' car drive away as they laughed. "Let's see if she can find her way home by herself," my mother shouted as they disappeared. That day changed everything. Years of therapy helped me build a new life, far away from the people who abandoned me. I never looked back. Until today. They found me. To outsiders, our life in a small New Jersey town looked like a postcard. Thomas and Carol Turner, successful entrepreneurs, respected members of the community, and their 2 kids, Ethan and me, originally Elizabeth, now Emily. But behind closed doors, our house was a minefield. My father Thomas owned the largest hardware store in town. People admired his booming laugh and generous donations to local charities. My mother Carol ran a small, but well-known bakery famous for its apple pies, which had won awards at the state fair 3 years in a row. To everyone else, they were the perfect couple. But the Thomas and Carol I knew were different. My father's cheerful mood evaporated the moment he stepped through the front door. He'd start drinking around dinner time, and his mood would darken as the hours passed. A bad day at the store meant we had to tiptoe around the house. My mother didn't protect us, she enabled him. She always had an excuse: he works so hard, or he just needs to blow off steam. Their parenting philosophy was what they called tough love. In reality, it was cruelty dressed up as discipline. They orchestrated lessons that anyone else would consider emotional abuse. When I was 8, they left me at a department store for over an hour because I asked for a candy bar. "Maybe now you'll learn not to be so greedy," my mom said when they finally returned and found me crying by the information desk. The manager had nearly called the police. My older brother Ethan, for years my senior, was a different story altogether. He was the golden child, the star of the school soccer team, straight-A student, and Dad's fishing buddy. While I got scolded for an A- in physics, where did the rest of the points go? Ethan was praised for every A. I became the family scapegoat. If something went wrong, it was always my fault. Dinner got cold? I must have distracted Mom. Dad had a bad day? Probably because he stayed up late helping me with homework. One memory stands out clearly: my 12th birthday. They promised a small party with friends. I waited all week. But that morning, they said we were going to an amusement park instead. They dropped me off, handed me $10, and said, "Have fun, we'll pick you up at 5. I spent the entire day sitting alone on a bench near the entrance, too afraid to go anywhere. They didn't come at 5. They came at 7 and found me in tears, terrified. "Just teaching you independence," Dad laughed. There was no cake. No presents. When I cried, they called me ungrateful. These jokes and lessons were a regular part of my childhood. I learned to survive by being quiet, invisible. I spent as much time as I could at friends' houses and escaped through drawing. On paper, I created worlds where adults were kind and kids felt safe. The day before the train station incident, I got my final report card, all A's except for 1 A- in physics. For most parents, that would be a source of pride. For mine, it was unacceptable. "An A-," my father roared, waving the report card. "What's wrong with you? Getting lazy?" Ethan never got less than an A. "We're not raising mediocrity," added my mother. That night, I overheard them talking in the kitchen. "She needs to learn that life doesn't hand you anything," said my father. "She's too soft, too sensitive," my mother agreed. "Maybe she needs a real lesson, one she won't forget." The next morning, they told me we were going to New York for the day. Ethan couldn't come. He had soccer practice. Just the 3 of us. Hope sparked inside me. Maybe this was their way of apologizing. How wrong I was. That morning, I woke with a mix of anxiety and excitement. At breakfast, Dad was unusually cheerful, joking and ruffling my hair. Mom hummed as she wrapped sandwiches for the trip. The sudden change in mood felt more alarming than comforting. The drive from our town to Manhattan took just over 3 hours. Dad blasted classic rock on the radio while Mom quizzed me from the front seat about state capitals. When I got one wrong, Dad clicked his tongue. Even a third grader knows that, Liz. As we neared the city limits, Mom turned to me with a strange smile. Well, Elizabeth, she said, think you're pretty smart, huh? Even with your A-. Maybe, I replied cautiously. Book smart, Dad chimed in, eyes on the road. But street smarts are something else. Real life doesn't give grades, Mom added cryptically. The knot in my stomach tightened. We parked at Penn Station around noon. The massive building, buzzing with rushing travelers, overwhelmed me. I had never been to the city before, and its size stunned me. Hungry? Dad asked as we walked into the grand hall. I nodded, still clinging to hope that this was just a normal family outing. Good. Wait here by this column, Mom said, pointing to one of the massive pillars near the main entrance. We're just going to move the car and grab something to eat. Back in 15 minutes. Can I come? I asked, sensing that familiar fear creeping in. What are you, 5? Dad laughed. It's just 15 minutes. You're 13, for God's sake. But I don't know New York, I whispered. Exactly, Mom said sharply. Stay right here. Don't move. I watched them disappear into the crowd. The station clock read 12:17. I stood awkwardly by the column, watching the flow of people. 15 minutes passed. Then 20. Then 30. The quiet worry inside me grew into panic. Maybe they forgot where they left me. Maybe something happened. After an hour, I was barely holding back tears. I didn't have a phone. No money for a payphone. All I had was $5, my weekly allowance, saved for this trip. Then, through the large windows, I saw our blue car slowly passing the station. My heart leapt. Maybe they were lost. I ran toward the exit, waving frantically. As the car came level with me, I saw both of them inside. Dad was driving slowly. When he saw me, he smirked and waved, not in recognition, but mockery. Mom rolled down the window and shouted the words that changed my life. Let's see if you can find your way home. Their laughter echoed as the car accelerated and disappeared. I stood frozen, unable to process what had just happened. They had left me deliberately. Alone. In a city 3 hours from home. Denial gave way to crushing reality. This wasn't a 15-minute lesson. They weren't around the corner waiting to pop out and say, surprise. Learned your lesson. They were really driving back to New Jersey without me. There were too many people, too much noise, too many exits. Where was I supposed to go? What could I do? I had no phone, no acquaintances in New York, insufficient money for a return ticket, and no documents. I was just a lost 13-year-old girl, abandoned to fate in the heart of a giant, indifferent city. For 2 hours, I wandered the station aimlessly, like in a fog. Sobs alternated with moments of numbness when I forced myself to pull myself together. I was terrified to ask for help. My parents had always warned me about dangerous strangers and said that the police would take disobedient children to horrible places. Around 3:30 p.m., a station employee named Jean noticed me. She was an older woman with streaks of gray in her hair and kind eyes behind red-rimmed glasses. She saw me circling the same spots, clearly in distress. "Are you lost, sweetie?" she asked, kneeling to be at eye level. I shook my head automatically, conditioned never to admit my troubles to strangers. "Where are your parents?" she gently pressed. "They went and moved the car," I lied. My voice shook. "When did that happen?" Jean's face grew more concerned. I couldn't pretend anymore. 3 hours of loneliness, fear, and confusion broke through in a flood of tears. "My parents left me," I sobbed. "They drove away and told me to find my own way home." "But you live back in New Jersey?" she asked softly. When I nodded, her expression shifted from concern to alarm. Jean led me to a quieter office next to the station staff area, gave me a bottle of water, and asked me to tell her everything. Between sobs, I told her about my parents, the A- in physics, and how I watched them drive away laughing. "What's your name, dear?" she asked. "Elizabeth Thompson," I whispered. "And how old are you, Elizabeth?" 13. Her face softened. "I'm going to help you, Elizabeth. This is not okay. This is not normal." Jean notified her supervisor, who called station security. A warm-hearted guard named Maxwell asked more questions. My address, phone number, anything about my parents. I could see grown-ups exchanging grim looks nearby. We need to call the police, Maxwell finally said. What your parents did? It's abandoning a child. It's a crime. So at 4:45 p.m. on Saturday, I sat in a small office at Union Station, watching Senior Lieutenant Tanya Ross of the police prepare an incident report on my abandonment. My body went numb. It couldn't be true, but it was. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as I sat wrapped in a station-issued blanket, although I didn't feel cold. Lieutenant Ross had brought me here after the report was filed. She was gentle, but official, documenting everything with a seriousness that made my situation hit home even harder. We called your house twice, she told me. No one answered. My stomach clenched. Maybe they're still on their way? I offered feebly, holding on to desperate hope that it was some cruel lesson. Soon, a woman in her 40s with curly chestnut hair entered. I'm Larissa Daniels from Child Protective Services. May I talk with you? She asked kindly. The next hour blurred into a haze of soft questions. Had my parents done this before? Yes, but not this cruelly. Had they ever hit me? No. Did I feel safe at home? My pause said more than words. What will happen to me tonight? I finally asked softly. Larissa explained that, unable to reach my parents, I would be placed with a temporary foster family until the situation clarified. The phrase foster family chilled me. We have a wonderful emergency placement, she reassured me. The Morrison family has worked with us for years. They have a daughter about your age. By 9 p.m., I was sitting at the Morrison dining table, picking at spaghetti I couldn't eat. Diane and Robert Morrison did their best to make me feel welcome, but everything felt unreal. Their daughter Alice showed me to a guest room, awkwardly offering pajamas and a toothbrush. Your parents will pick you up tomorrow, right? She said, trying to comfort me. I nodded, but I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at an unfamiliar ceiling, replaying the image of my laughing parents driving away. What kind of parents do this? What did I do to deserve it? The next morning, after barely touching breakfast, Larissa Daniels returned. Her expression said everything before she spoke. We reached your parents late last night. Are they coming for me? I already knew the answer. Not yet, Larissa said gently. They claim it was a tough love lesson in independence. Tears welled in my eyes. They left me in another city. They say they plan to call the station in a few hours to check on you, but the authorities got involved. Translation: they didn't plan to call anyone. They expected me, in panic, to somehow find my way home alone with no money, phone, or ID. A meeting was set for Monday at 2 p.m. in a government office downtown. You don't have to speak to them if you don't want, Larissa assured me. I'll be with you the whole time. We entered a conference room with a long table. 2 officials sat waiting, Larissa's supervisor and a family court representative. 5 minutes later, my parents entered, looking nothing like the confident, laughing people who drove off from Union Station. My father's face was haggard. My mother's eyes were red. Their lawyer followed. Elizabeth, her mother began as she stepped forward. I recoiled. Please sit, Larissa said firmly. What followed was the most surreal conversation of my young life. My parents, with their lawyer, presented their version. They were concerned I wasn't independent enough. The station incident was a controlled life lesson. They claimed they returned after 20 minutes to check on me from afar, but couldn't find me. They assumed I had used my resourcefulness to phone home or ask for help, proof of the very skills they wanted me to learn. We were teaching her independence, my father insisted. Kids these days are too pampered. You left your 13-year-old daughter alone in a city 3 hours away with no money, phone, or ID, Larissa said skeptically. My money claim is exaggerated, my mother retorted. There are payphones everywhere. You could have made a collect call. I sat stunned. They showed no remorse. They genuinely believed they did nothing wrong. When I was finally asked if I wanted to go home with them, I found my voice. No, I said firmly, surprising even myself. Their shock should have pleased me, but relief was overwhelming. Don't be ridiculous, my father muttered. Of course you're coming home, the lawyer interjected. This isn't your decision, Elizabeth. But I'd already made it. At the end, my mother tried again. Elizabeth, darling, you're overreacting. We only wanted to teach you not to depend on people. I learned, I said through tears. That lesson wasn't independence, it was abandonment. I was then escorted out of the room.